All right, let's start where we should, with all due respect. The proverbial gloves are off. Deputy President William Ruto has today castigated his boss in what he termed as a waste of a second term. In direct attack on his boss and former political friend, DP Ruto called out what he termed as a government controlled by selfish interest, monopoly, and state-captured institutions. Meanwhile, the Deputy President took credit of the more than 700-kilometer standard gauge railway, 10,000 kilometers of tarmac roads, and connection of 6 million people to electricity. The fight for Jubilee legacy is on. Is it possible to cut the Jubilee baby in half? That's the question tonight. But I have Senior Counsel Professor Ojienda with me and Senior Counsel Ahmednasir Abdullahi to make sense of all the coalitions and collisions, questions and quests in this election. But let's set the stage first by listening to what happened today.
Sisi ambao unatudhulumu, sisi ambao unatupiga vita, sisi ambao unatutesa. Mimi nataka nikwambie mheshimiwa ndugu yangu rais, sisi tumeona yale umetufanya, lakini kwa sababu sisi ni wacha Mungu, sisi tumekusamehe. Sisi rais tumekusamehe na tumekuachia Mungu.
All right. Let's start where we should, and I'm in the house with senior counsels. I'm informed quite correctly you're senior counsel 4, so I'm obliged to start with you for your response. Senior Counsel Ahmednasir Abdullahi, what's your reading of what happened today with UDA?
I think this is my senior by around 2 minutes.
Around 2 minutes?
Yeah, just about. He signed the role and I signed after 2 minutes.
Yeah, but still a senior?
Yes, I'm 5, he's 4.
All right. Well, what's your reading? What's your reading of what happened today, especially what the Deputy President had to say today to his boss?
I think we have, officially, I think almost we have the 2 main candidates now for the president. Last week, it was, the weekend it was the Honorable former Prime Minister, Raila. And I think today, I think the party UDA nominated the Deputy President to be the running mate. So I think now we are almost officially kicking off the season. We know who are the main 2 candidates for the presidency. So I think the race has started.
The gloves are off, if you like. For the first time, we had things like my competitors, monopoly. They've monopolized state institutions. They have weaponized, DCI, EACC, and the courts against, political opponents. State capture, all right, and that sort of thing.
I think, it's the first time he said, but I think if you look at what happened in the last 4 years in terms of the second term of Jubilee, I think there's a general consensus in the country that basically it was a one-man rule. The president was a one-man, it was a one-man government, no opposition. Parliament was, doing what he wants. The judiciary was, during Maraga's time, I think the judiciary was fairly strong, but we are seeing some signs that the judiciary now is becoming an important or an integral part of government. So, from a political and legal perspective, the last 4 years have been very unique in this country in terms of how the government was running. We had a functional but dysfunctional government, an opposition that was in government, and a government that was, thrown out of government. So, there's a lot of very unique things that happen in this country, and I think making sense of that is not an easy task.
I want to get to Senior Counsel 5, but first I want to just play exactly that bit so that we speak on the same thing of what the Deputy President said today, so that we are all speaking on the same.
Agenda was abandoned, pushed into the back burner, as execution of its flagship projects was left at the mercy of forces of emergent state capture. Those who remained loyal to our founding vision were shunned, hounded, threatened, and then persecuted. This is how we lost 4 years that would have gifted us with a brilliant blossoming of a beautiful dream which inspired millions of Kenyans in 2013. To his credit, my friend the President did inform me that he needed space to work on his personal legacy as the 4th President. I obliged, and this led to my eventual retreat to the margins of a government that I had participated in forming.
Prof, let's get your reading of what's currently happening. As Senior Counsel Ahmednasir says, like, well, it looks like the gloves are off, but it's for the first time, and we have the two candidates. Not only that, but we expected the Deputy President to respond at some point, because his boss in the last month or so had come out, right? What's your reading of what happened today?
James, thank you very much. I do believe that the Deputy President, in the 4 years that my learned friend Ahmednasir has referred to, has been the substantive Deputy President. And I think my reading of the Constitution, Article 137, clearly points to the Deputy President having a functional office, and that is his role as Deputy President in office is read together with what Article 132 provides, that he's part of the presidency and is part of the execution of the agenda of the presidency. He cannot run away from the agenda of the presidency. I think what is new is that he's telling us that he has not been part of the action in the last 4 years, but he was very much a part of the action in the last election from 2013. I think that constitutionally, he cannot run away from what Jubilee has done as a party. He cannot run away from what government has done. He therefore will take blame for any inaction on the part of government and would take credit for any action on the part of government.
Yeah. Is it not a principal assistant to the president? So in that effect, the president has to assign him duties.
Essentially, he is the assistant president. In fact, if you look at the presidency as set out in the Constitution, it includes the Deputy President and the Cabinet. So you cannot say that Cabinet executed certain tasks and left him out, or that he sat back and let the President and his Cabinet work, and he did not work. I think the Deputy President is perhaps speaking too much. He should just sit back, focus on the election, but not make too much noise, because we know that he was part of the Jubilee government. He cannot run away from what the Jubilee government did not do.
You know, in law, as my learned friend rightly knows, in law, what my learned friend describes is there is a distinction between de jure and de facto. One is a factual situation, and one is a legal situation. Of course, the Deputy President legally, constitutionally, is the Deputy President. But de facto, was he exercising the functions of the Deputy President? No. And the answer is too obvious. We don't have to labor the point, because everybody knows that the last 4 years, even though the Deputy President was legally the Deputy President of the country, from a factual point of view, he was not the Deputy President. And I will give you so many examples. I think there is this example of, you know, in Mombasa, where he couldn't even access his laundry that was locked in his official residence, because I think someone refused him access. So when the Deputy President cannot access even his official residence, it shows, you know, how far he has been thrown from the center of power. So, I mean, there are many other examples where I think cabinet has been held without him being invited. There are many functions, state banquets, you know, that he has not been invited. There is so many examples even of his budget, you know, being cut. So legally he was, but I think the uniqueness of the situation was, and I think this is, you know, some of the dicey situation of constitutionalism in Africa, is that even when you are elected a deputy president, the president can do so much that he can completely disregard you, run his government without you, continues to function. If he needs support in parliament, he will. Actually, Raila was the de facto deputy to the president the last 4 years, de facto. But as a matter of fact,
as a question arises, hang on why then could he not resign?
That's the point.
If he didn't find himself useful in that system.
No. But you see, resigning is an option you have. You don't have to resign. You can resign if you are very annoyed, and I think he was really annoyed about the situation.
So he wasn't annoyed enough.
No. I think when you do, you know, a cost-benefit analysis of the situation, probably he thought that he can continue. But I think, and Prof, you can't argue about this. The last 4 years, the deputy president was deputy president in name because his functions were more exercised by the former prime minister.
I think that is an overstatement, James. I do not think that any single day did His Excellency Raila Odinga sit in the office of the deputy president. Never. But let me let's take ourselves back to history, the Limuru conference and the aftermath, when Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was treated very much in the same way. He was not assigned duties, and the then president, the late Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, acted in a manner that demonstrated that obviously Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was not a vice president in execution of his duties as a vice president. And it got to a point where Jaramogi resigned. Why didn't His Excellency William Ruto resign?
I think that's a very good point.
Yeah, he would have resigned.
I think that's a very good point.
But it is also not true, Ahmednasir, senior counsel, that Raila Odinga at any point sat in as a deputy president.
We are not talking of the physical sitting in. We are talking of the de facto sitting in. But I think you gave the example of the Limuru conference and the late Oginga Odinga resigning. I think history has taught us that I think the step he took when he resigned in anger, although people call it in principle, was a wrong. If you look at the trajectory of his history. And I think probably the deputy prime minister has learned from that history and said the best option, even when you are humiliated the way the late Oginga Odinga was humiliated, is to stay put and refuse to leave the scene.
So the question is this, are we then allowing sort of like bad manners in terms of how we would not allow democracy, if you like, things to work the way it's scheduled and it's acceptable in law? So in this sense, and we have running mates in this sort of new election, what stops whoever getting elected from doing the exact same thing that has happened to this deputy president in the last 5 years? What stops that from happening again?
I think the constitutional principles, I think Article 10 sets out principles of governance. And I think those principles of governance include good faith, that every leader who is elected will act uberima fides, but essentially that every leader will execute the public duty of his office with honor and in principle. Remember, all political parties ascribe to the epithets set out and that define them under Article 91. They are representative, and so we believe that every political leader elected into office will exercise the functions of his office in the manner prescribed by the Constitution.
But what happens when they don't?
And
my learned friend, I mean, Prof, you are not answering the question, eh?
I am. I'm just saying that it's expected that every day we do the right thing, and I don't expect that, and even in this case, I don't think that any person told the deputy president not to work.
Prof is not answering the question, and I think the answer to the question is that President Uhuru has set a very dangerous precedent, where he has literally thrown the constitution to the dogs. I mean, he has a deputy, which they were elected together, they were on the same ticket, they got the same votes. But one is in power, I mean, exercising powers that, I don't know whether they exist or not, but he exercised powers and, literally locked his deputy in a room and continued to run the government as if his deputy does not exist. And there is nothing, of course, I think the honor of the person who is in office really matters a lot. But there's nothing, there's nothing that stops a president from completely ignoring his deputy. Like it has happened. Although it's very unusual, and probably it will not happen. But a president can do that if he wants. I mean, he brings, the opposition the way.
On practical terms. On practical terms.
James, I'm a student of law, and what Article 3.2 tells me is that a government run in any manner other than set under the Constitution is unconstitutional. So that what Article 132 then says, and 137, is that government shall be run by the president as the CEO, and he shall run his affairs through cabinet including the deputy president.
What happens when that doesn't happen, Prof?
So now we are seeing a lot now. Of course, then you say there have been violations of the Constitution. You can say that. But you see, a lot of the factual questions are revealed as happening today. His Excellency, William Ruto, is saying tonight in his unveiling that there are certain things that were done to him. Why didn't he speak to the detail? Why didn't he go to court? And
no. But in all fairness, he doesn't. We are witnesses to you are a witness to what happened the last 4 years. I am a witness. He is a witness. We all know that the situation where the deputy.
Why did he go to court?
And do what in court?
Seek declarations.
Senior counsel.
That is violation.
Senior counsel, I want to take a short break because when I come back, there's another serious matter. Serious matter discussed tonight. Have our institutions been weaponized to go after political opponents? Can we see that? Can we feel that? Before we get to the collisions and collisions. With all due respect, you're watching NTV Tonight with Senior Counsel Ahmednasir Abdullahi, Senior Counsel 4 and Senior Counsel 5. 2 minutes, Professor Tom Ojienda.
Renew your subscription today for just 299 shillings per month on Nyota Bouquet to catch Nia, Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. exclusively on StarTimes Rainbow TV, channel 113 on aerial decoder and 484 on satellite. Rainbow TV, home of Kenyan entertainment.
Mama Stevo, where are the kids?
I think they're upstairs doing their revision.
Oh, you guys are here. Maria and Steve, which revision papers are you doing today?
Baba, mimi nashughulikia maswali ya marudio ya somo la Kiswahili kutoka kwa gazeti la Taifa leo.
Na wewe?
I am working on the mathematics revision paper from the junior sport magazine of the Daily Nation.
Wow, this is wonderful. Are the revision papers from Taifa leo and Daily Nation working for you guys?
Yes, Dad. Wanauliza maswali yao kwa njia nzuri na nyepesi sana.
And the questions are in tandem with our syllabus.
Dear parents, invest in Taifa leo and Junior Sport for KCPE and KCSE revision papers. Kwa maswali ya gazeti la Taifa leo, usiukose uhondo huo kila Jumatatu hadi Jumamosi. In our Junior Sport, it's every Monday. Do not miss out.
It is now a matter of history that PSG blew a 2-0 aggregate lead, eliminated by Real Madrid as its mental strength crumbled and its fears were exposed. While UEFA opened an investigation into chairman Nasser Al-Khelaifi allegedly storming the referee's dressing room, there was also talk manager Mauricio Pochettino faced the sack. This is the Football Review.
There's always interaction between ourselves and the team at Family Bank. They've worked with us very much as part of the AM family.
Welcome to the family, your home of corporate business, because you can always bank on family. Fuzu na family.
Get the latest and credible news on the general elections. Subscribe to the Daily Nation Election News. Send the word election to 20688 and stay informed on coalitions, defections, resignations, election candidates, and many more. Daily Nation. The truth.
The First Lady.
I'm very grateful for what you've done for me, but a couple of clever plays don't make you an expert on the subject. Politics is much more complex than the thing.
Politics are not complicated at all. It is nothing more than a bunch of lies and a handful of hypocrites with private planes that make people believe they care. That is politics.
Paloma, what is wrong with you? I just asked you to marry me and you're reacting like this.
Because it makes me angry. Everything that is going on makes me angry, and it's obvious that you don't respect me. A couple of clever moves. That is the value you place on everything that I've done for you.
Are you probably stuck on how to start or place an installment of 590k on any of Optiven's projects and get an instant 15k cashback? Call us on 0790 300 300. Kwamua maono yako na Optiven.
They have weaponized state institutions. They have weaponized the DCI. They have weaponized the EACC. They have weaponized the KRA to run political errands, to dismantle businesses that belong to people who do not worship them.
Welcome back, with all due respect. Senior Counsel Ahmednasir, let me start with you. This question of weaponizing of state institutions, EACC, DCI, courts, and everything else, as part of a political scheme, as the Deputy President claims. Your reaction to that, but most importantly, on a wider sort of question on, do these institutions, if they can be bent, if you're to believe what the Deputy President said, if they can be bent, is there any corrective measure really, or we have to figure out new ways?
Well, actually, weaponized is the result of state capture. And the Constitution has created a lot of institutions that are independent and how the office holders will be recruited. What this government has done very cleverly is that they have captured first the recruitment process in the Constitution. And then they install a person that is pre-identified by certain organs of the state, especially the intelligence, if I may say. So they bring X, who has been identified. They take him through a sham interviews, which again, the people who are conducting the interviews have been pre-selected, and they install that person in a critical institution. So that person works at their behest. Because the system has been compromised, it is easy now to weaponize. The constitutional design of many offices was, to place independent people, who will exercise certain powers as per the Constitution. But that's water under the bridge. That ended with, the government of Kibaki. In the last 10 years, and I think the Deputy President will admit even during the first 5 years, this was very, very common. Those independent institutions, whether it's in the judiciary, whether it's in the police force, whether it is in the DPP's office, whether it is constitutional commissions, the government put people they have pre-selected in a certain manner and then put them using sham interviews. Now, those guys now are acting for or on behalf of the government when they are holding very, very powerful institutions that are supposed to be independent.
Would you say then that the Constitution has failed in that respect?
Yes,
so it doesn't matter who.
Yes, the way the Constitution was envisaged to work has not worked because the Constitution expects people to behave in a certain manner. So those people have failed to behave the way the Constitution said they should behave. So in that way, the constitutional process is broken. It's broke.
Senior Counsel, do you see it the same or you feel different?
James have a different view. I think Ahmednasir had the advantage, Senior Counsel had the advantage of serving in the first Judicial Service Commission. And I think that they appointed the first Chief Justice, Willie Mutunga, Senior Counsel, through a proper process. Public participation was part of it, and I think we got a very good Chief Justice. The second, when Ahmednasir left JSC, I took over from him as representing the Law Society, and we took part in a transparent interview and appointed Justice Maraga as Chief Justice.
It was not pre-selected.
And it was not pre-selected. So I think unless Ahmednasir Senior Counsel is referring to other commissions, I don't think the commission that are certain pre-selected or predetermined candidates. Now, as for the other commissions and as for targeting individuals, I believe DP, His Excellency William Ruto, was addressing questions touching on, I believe, the closure of Keroche and other players who perhaps have been the subject of other processes, legal or otherwise. Carey, he's mentioned Carey.
Yes, EACC, DCI.
I think the message is clear. You need not fear if you know you are on the right. We need to use the law in an appropriate form. For Carey, when there are issues that are raised, go to court, take advantage of a very proper process within Carey, the ADR process, assess taxes if they are due, agree with Carey on payment by installments. There are processes. So I believe the Keroche question can be resolved without much ado. So that we should not just see targeting in every process. Where the EACC comes for a person who comes for you unfairly, go to court, stop them. So I think that in as much as there may be a feeling that there may be certain violations arresting certain people for certain acts, what people must also know is that there's a recourse. You can go to court and challenge.
No, I mean, okay, Prof, I think, I mean, he's speaking from, a simplistic understanding of the law. That's the way the law is.
That's the law.
No. But the reality in Kenya is different from the way the law is.
How do you advise your clients?
And we know so many Kenyans today, so many Kenyans whose bank accounts have been closed by KRA because of a certain political persuasions they adhere to. I mean, I know people whose contracts have been cancelled because they are perceived to belong to a certain political persuasion. I mean, the law, I mean, nobody cares about the law or the consequence of the law. That's for the next government. But there are many contracts in this country that have been cancelled. There are people whose business has been completely ruined because of the political stand they have taken. And even those who go to court, how many judgments have been disobeyed? According to the Attorney General, 1.5 trillion in damages have not been paid. So what's the use of going to court even if your monies will not be paid?
So, I mean, at least they'll be a finding, an edict from the court that there's been a violation. Insofar as the obedience of court orders is concerned, I agree that government has not been very fair in complying with court orders. That I join issues. I agree with my learned friend on that question.
Right.
But we cannot sit back and say that we'll allow government to violate rights so that people will be targeted. I think we don't just sit back that now rights have been violated. Let us also go to court and show that there are certain things that are not done right. We can't just sit back
sometimes,
and say that,
if we read things superficially, we will not understand things. I mean, when you see Koroche, for example, being targeted, I mean, there's a lot of other dynamics. There's competition. There's all these things you hear. There's
competition from who?
Competition from other beer makers. I mean, that's what they say. I mean, you don't. I mean, if you don't pay tax or if you have a tax liability, there's a way of sorting out. But when you shut a company, when you write to all the banks in the country and say don't extend credit line to this company, I mean, KRA goes out of its way, and I agree and I can testify that there are many institutions like KRA, the police, the DPP that target certain people deliberately because they have been told to go and target. And that's a complete abuse of the process.
The question, and I'm saying this tonight online, that for the last 10 years, Jubilee has brought this sort of unprecedented disregard of the law. And it's been everywhere, in different places. And the question is this, like, going through all this process, you're mentioning about KRA and, using court process and disobedience of court orders and that sort of thing. Do we really going to trust these institutions, regardless of the transition to a new government?
Jubilee, now that is Ahmednasir's client. He's been supporting Jubilee. Now he's supporting UDA. In ODM, we have been fighting for the rights of individuals, individual rights. So we have been on this side of the divide, on the receiving end. So I think I should be saying what the things Ahmed should be saying. As ODM.
No, I agree with him. Jubilee, the history of Jubilee has two phases. The first 5 years and the second 5 years. The first 5 years, that's the time I used to belong to Jubilee. The second 5 years, it has become ODM. So it is, let me tell you, and this I'm saying it seriously, the problems of this country happened when ODM, joined the government through informal process. And the government that came to power was dissolved in informal process. That is where Kenya went wrong. And that is because the president, in his own wisdom or powers, sort of disbanded his government and brought in, he brought in ODM, or he shared power. Actually, if you look at the last 4 years, the Honorable Prime Minister was sharing constitutional powers with the president in an informal setting. It is not provided for in the constitution, but you could see him, sometimes in the State House, sometimes participating in some small things. He was exercising, and I think I will give you an example. I think there was one time, was it petrol that was increased or something? He said he will intervene, and the next day, the price was brought down. So he was exercising constitutional power extra constitutionally, extrajuridically, what scholars call here, in a manner not provided for the constitution. And the deputy prime minister could not exercise his powers given to him by the constitution because he was stopped from doing this. So the country, in terms of constitutional, rule of law, democracy, the damage we have suffered the last 4 years because of this informal setting, because of ODM just, coming to power. When they have lost the election, they lost the election, and they came to power. And they've been exiled power for 4 years.
I think there's a very thin line between rigging an election.
No, we are not talking about rigging. We are talking about
rigged elections. Yes. You can't talk about losing an election. His Excellency Raila Odinga won the election.
Which election?
This is 2017.
You know that. It is all about today. Moses Kuria said, and they stole the election.
No, he lost by 1.4 million, and you know that you have done the petition.
You know the irregularities. You know the petition, but you know. But the main point is, James. Let me say this: that the informal exercise of state power. It is not correct for my lion friend Ahmednasir to say that there was informal exercise by the Prime Minister of state power. I don't think, far from it.
Right.
The Prime Minister would only help where there were the requirement of numbers in Parliament to push a bill that was required for the good of public interest. I think that's the petroleum case. I don't think that he himself as Prime Minister could do anything because he does not have executive power. The prerogative powers, constitutional prerogatives, reside in the president, in the presidency. So His Excellency, the Deputy President, cannot run away from the reality, the constitutional reality, that whenever the president exercised any form of state power, he was part of that state power, whether present or absent.
How should we read what then happened with the handshake? Because this question keeps coming up again and again.
The handshake was about 4 pillars. It was about delivering peace after post-election violence and the turbulence we went through, the momentary turbulence we went through. It was to quieten the country, bring peace, bring back development, industrialization, focus on housing, ensure that there's delivery to the public.
Did it change the structure of government?
It did not change the structure of government. Jubilee was still in power. ODM was still in the opposition. They had a few committees in Parliament. But I believe overall that every blame for every inaction in government lies in the doorsteps of Jubilee. Not
did
handshake change the...
Of course, it changed the structure of government informally,
See, informally...
Yes. There was no constitutional amendment that changed the structure. But the moment the handshake when we witnessed the handshake, the Jubilee government was sort of disbanded, and the president could run the government as one person. When he wants advice, as they call it, I think there was brotherhood that was created. Yes,
that's true.
The minority, the opposition became part of government, and government became the opposition. So we did not change the structure of government from, constitutionally, deja, but de facto, the government changed, the structure of government changed. President Kenyatta could rule the country, and he ruled the country for 4 years alone, without excessive power. Never in the history of this country has a president exercised executive power to the extent Kenyatta exercised in the last 4 years. Never.
If that's the case,
no checks and balances.
What stops?
Moi was president without a vice president for a long time.
Moi had one of the strongest checks and balances in Parliament and even within his government. You can't compare the powers Kenyatta exercised the last 4 years to any president, not his father, not Moi, not Kibaki.
You're forgetting that during Moi's time we had unicameralism, one parliament, which was KANU, and he would appoint and drop vice presidents by the roadside. You can't compare that to this time.
But this one, there was no vice president here.
We have Senate, we have Parliament, we have members from different political parties, and essentially the ruling party was your party, Jubilee.
In all fairness, we did not have a ruling party the last 4 years. There was no ruling party.
The consultation with the Prime Minister was minimal on perhaps a number of questions, and on many social questions they appeared together. Maybe they consulted, but it was never on a constitutional pedestal that you'd say that this action was undertaken at the behest of the president and the Prime Minister.
So I'll ask this.
The President and his brother.
So I'll ask this. So who takes the blame? Because there's clear distinction, at least in the political terms, of first term and second term. And there's apparently a handshake, second term, first term was Jubilee, second term. So who takes the blame?
Jubilee.
No. You know, historians will tell us that the handshake was one of the most momentous events in the history of this country because it destroyed our constitutional fabric. It destroyed institutions. It destroyed parliament. It destroyed our executive because the president, because of the handshake, got guarantee from Raila that one, we will not provide oversight in parliament. Two, that if you throw away your deputy president under the bus, we will support you. So the president, you know, because the president actually got a blank check to abuse his powers, to disregard the constitution, and nothing happens. So when we look at the handshake very superficially, as you know, a handshake between two. The handshake was a constitutional overthrow of the constitution. Yes, we did not have a constitution the last 4 years.
But Ahmed, here's the question: what stops? You know, if we go through elections, as perhaps we'll go through this, that you know it's heavy and it's heavily contested. What stops, say, His Excellency Ruto having handshake with His Excellency Raila?
Well, no, it's His Excellency.
Yes.
Did you say who?
His Excellency Ruto and His Excellency Raila.
Who is the president here?
Whoever becomes the president.
Why can't we start with?
Okay, His Excellency Raila. His Excellency. So what stops another handshake? What is that worst thing with the handshake?
No, but you see, the handshake was undertaken by the president and the prime minister with the sole purpose of destroying the political base of the deputy president. That was the essence of it. All these other things are, you know, side effects and peripheral. The thing that brought Raila and Uhuru together to do the handshake was to target the deputy prime minister. Yes, I mean there was a unity of purpose. Yes, everyone. Uhuru wanted to destroy his deputy. Raila wanted the deputy to be destroyed. That's why they came together. That's why they compromised on so many things, and that is why, you know, they had that political stability in the last 4 years.
Yes. No, you are refusing this.
James, on the contrary, the handshake came about in the public interest. His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta wanted to take a different course and focus on development. Remember in his speech.
But what development?
Development.
Which ones? Like what?
We see development.
Like where?
We see infrastructure in the area of health.
It's Chinese money that has come.
No,
we are unable to pay.
Good roads. We have. Ahmed, let's be serious. You can't talk about Chinese money.
I went to Northern Kenya. What development is in Northern Kenya the last 4 years? Zero. What development is there in other parts of the country? Zero.
You know that.
What development is there in Masaini? Nothing.
No, we know that under the constitution. What happens?
You just see this road, and you know the problem with Kenyans, is that they see a small road somewhere, and they say there's development.
No, remember, we have 47 counties. Mandera, Wajir, and other counties. I know you come from Mandera County. If your governors are not delivering, don't blame the president.
No,
let's look at the national.
I thought we were talking about the development brought by the president, not devolution.
Once money appropriated under Article 2 or 3, you know it goes to counties in different forms. And if governors do not undertake development, they spend it in the current. Definitely no development.
We were talking about development. You said the handshake was about development.
Let me tell you about development.
Yes.
How many houses have we developed since the handshake happened?
0.2% of the projected
very houses. Many housing units, infrastructure.
Gentlemen.
I mean, you can't just trash the handshake.
Gentlemen.
Change the face of this country, James. Yes. And I think there's a reality we must live up to.
Okay. I want to discuss this question of coalition when I come back, and coalitions. And one of your senior members, the senior council members in this club, who signed a document that he has no clue the contents of it, will try and talk around that.
Which club?
The senior council club. We're taking a short break with all due respect. We'll be right back.
Fatu nyarire, yani hata una huruma kabisa. Yani umeketi chini hapo, ni simu unapiga simu, kasi ya simu ni kulia na hata huwezi kuihurumia jameni. Ingekuwa ni wewe unapigwa hivyo ungesikia namna gani? Ai bwana, yo hata una huruma hata kidogo. Ai haki bwana. Ai, you're making me go bananas bwana.
To get bananas, dial *812*806#. Skiza, Non-Nation.
The First Lady.
I'm very grateful for what you've done for me, but a couple of clever plays don't make you an expert on the subject. Politics is much more complex than the thing.
Politics are not complicated at all. It is nothing more than a bunch of lies and a handful of hypocrites with private planes that make people believe they care. That is politics.
Paloma, what is wrong with you? I just asked you to marry me and you're reacting like this.
Because it makes me angry. Everything that is going on makes me angry, and it's obvious that you don't respect me. A couple of clever moves. That is the value you place on everything that I've done for you.
Are you probably stuck on how to start or place an installment of 590k on any of Optiven's projects and get an instant 15k cashback? Call us on 0790 300 300. Kwa mua maono yako na Optiven.
It is unthinkable that one Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka will support Raila Amolo Odinga for the third time. I would rather go to Sekuru, my friend. Yeah. I would be the most stupid fellow on the earth to go and support the third time a presidential candidate, all right, without a measure of reciprocity.
And without a measure of looking at the documents that he signs. That's...
No, yeah, I mean, I come always to the defense of the former vice president, but you know, when he said that, I think he meant it. But now that he has changed, there is something in law we call duress and undue influence. Sometimes you make a decision because of duress and undue influence. So, I mean, this is not really his decision. I think he still stands the position that he doesn't want to support Prime Minister Raila for a third time without a measure of reciprocity. But because of duress and undue influence, he finds himself changed. And that's why I think you go to the next step. He signs even a document he has not read. I mean, he's so confused. How's that possible? No, I mean, he's so confused. The pressure is too much. I mean, this man, I think we need to sympathize with Kalonzo. This man has been put under a lot of pressure by the president and the deputy prime minister, by the deputy of the former prime minister. I mean, that is why this, and to be fair, you know, he's a very reasonable man. He's a very sober man. Normally, he will not have made the mistake he's making. But this man has been, I mean, I think he has been crushed as a person.
Yes. I have to say, I mean, he's a senior counsel and it's not a good reflection on you, on both of you, that, you know, he actually comes out and signs a document on national television, and then literally the next morning, he says, I have no idea what I signed.
James,
talk to me around the coalition question. That's around Azimio. 24, 25 parties together.
James, I was at KICC. My land friend did not go to Kasarani.
I don't belong to a party, so that I was at home.
Okay. Yeah, I was in KICC. And
what happened?
I witnessed the historic moment, the signing of the Azimio La Umoja agreement by political parties. I think there are 29 political parties. Most secretary generals of those parties signed. I saw Kalonzo Musyoka, His Excellency Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, walk into the room, accompanied or in the company of His Excellency the President of the Republic of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, and the Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga, and other political leaders, Eugene Wamalwa, the leader of Ubuntu Party, Lee Kinyanjui, and other leaders. You know, Azimio has a 9-member council. It's a structured organization that will deliver the presidency to this country. Kalonzo believes in the cause, and the cause was the support of His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga. So I think that,
but what did he say?
I think there's no contradiction that Kalonzo, as a person, was not supposed to sign. He didn't sign anything.
Right.
It is the Secretary General who moved to the table, and I saw him move there, and signed the coalition agreement. Remember, the coalition agreement is structured in a manner that provides a set out in the Political Parties Act 2011. The coalition agreement that was signed on Saturday speaks to a general structure of governance. And I do not think that in saying that he did not sign a document, because he did not sign in himself, his Secretary General did, His Excellency Kalonzo is simply speaking to lack of knowledge of the detail.
Great.
The document was about joining the coalition as the Miola Umoja.
Did you see this document yourself?
I will confess that yes, I was next to the document.
Yeah.
I've seen the document as well, I can say that.
As an object, you have seen it?
I've seen it, I've seen the document.
Okay. But not read it?
I've read the document.
Okay.
Yeah, but His Excellency Kalonzo Musyoka perhaps thought that OCA, the One Kenya Alliance movement, would come into the coalition as OCA.
Which is my next question.
But that is not...
Can a coalition join another coalition?
But before we go there, I think the important thing to appreciate is that the extent some big political players will go, literally to destroy others in order to achieve their objective. I think if you look at the forces behind this coalition making, you will see that, Kalonzo actually was a victim of circumstance. I mean, he was pushed, he was cajoled, he was, how many hours were you waiting?
He kept us waiting for 8 hours.
Yes.
Kalonzo Musyoka kept us in the hall for 8 hours.
But imagine how he was being banal beaten somewhere.
I don't believe that he had not read the coalition agreement.
It's not the first time you're seeing the document.
In the side room for 8 hours. We waited, we were sweating in the room for over 8 hours. So there's a contradiction there. I don't think that it would be proper for him to say he hadn't read the document. It is possible for him to say he didn't understand the context of the document, but I'm sure
he had seen the document.
He saw the document. And as senior counsel, he must have known what he was saying and what his party was saying.
So help us tonight, senior counsel. Is it possible, because we have this situation with One Kenya Alliance, the coalition, and seems to have joined the Azimio, and according to Kalonzo, it's called Azimio Oka. Signifies Oka Alliance has joined Azimio Alliance. Is that possible?
I had responded to this before, that under Section 7(9) of the Political Parties Act as amended in 2021, a political party cannot be a member of more than one coalition. So you cannot join two coalitions. In short, if you're a member of OCA, you cannot jump to Azimio la Umoja. And therefore, political parties that signed the coalition agreement signed as political parties, individual political parties.
But there are a lot of mistakes that will occur during this process. And these mistakes and this confusion are occurring because of the desperation of the main players. You guys are so desperate, to bring parties together. You have a list of, I think, 30-something or 28.
29.
Some of them even are, we used to have a briefcase parties. Some of them are now a wallet. The documents can be put in a wallet. No, briefcase is too big. So, they are so desperate. They're bringing parties together. Some of them, there was one I saw from Pokot. It's a one-man's party. There are some from Northern Kenya. But the desperation of the main players, especially the president and the prime minister.
To be fair, the other coalition as well as these wallet parties, if you like. It's one party.
Not really. This one is, it's an amalgam of how many parties. They take pride, actually. My learned friend takes pride that we are 28. He has a list. He was showing me.
Let me tell you, James.
So during that process, I think there will be so much confusion because of the pressures the principal players are putting on guys to create a winning coalition. But there's 28 parties. Most of them are generals without army. They have nobody. When you go to the ballot, some of them will not bring you 5 or even 10 members. Yes.
James, under the Political Parties Act, the Registrar of Political Parties has in register 85 political parties, 85. Now, out of the 85...
They all meet the requirements to be a political party.
The 85.
You almost have now 50%.
But 85, we got 29 political parties to join Azimio la Umoja. His Excellency, Dr. William Ruto's party and Ahmed's party, UDA, only has 5 members. And some of them are called, have names like Jibebe. Clearly, you can see the winning...
Governor Kabogo will not be happy with you.
No. That's Kabogo's. I didn't know. I just saw Jibebe party and I was wondering, what is this country coming to? But let me tell you this. On Saturday, when this coalition agreement was signed, all members of these political parties walked into the room and seemed to. Of course, I was seeing some of them for the first time, I must confess. But the Lonyangapuo party from Northeast for Pokot is a very serious party. They proposed the Prime Minister as the coalition presidential candidate. It's a very serious party. And I remember Prof spoke. And so it's not a small party as you think. Maybe you think of others. There are others that clearly.
No, that's a very. I don't think it even has members apart from the chairman.
But how is it a party without members?
I mean, in Kenya now, most of these parties have officials, but they are not registered members. I mean, that's why a person owns them as property. There's a secondary market actually where you sell these parties nowadays. I'm not surprised if my land friend has one party.
No, I don't have political. I'm an ODM member and I'm not going to any party. But let me tell you this, the point that Ahmednasir has, that you can find yourself registered in a political party without applying. Because I know certain political parties, I think upon formation, they went to M-Pesa agents and got some names. I know that there are people who find themselves in My Money and other parties. Well, you don't. If you do a search, you'll be shocked to find what party you belong. You don't know what party you belong to, I'm sure.
I check and I keep getting myself out of different political parties. But the question is this, as we get to the last break and finish this. The question of all these coalitions and being built, it's sort of supposed to show, well, political supremacy, 1, 2, but also importantly, to hold those agreements together of what we've agreed we will do once we cross on this other side. Is any of these things that people are signing everywhere, everyone is signing documents, do they hold water after a president actually walks into office?
Actually, even before we go there, these agreements are meaningless. They create a false impression that these agreements are, power sharing agreements. They are not. If you look at those agreements, there's nothing to share. I mean, I think there's the agreement between Jubilee and ODM, maybe there's a power sharing. But these agreements that all of the parties are signing, there's absolutely nothing to share. It's an intention, and I think Prof will agree with me, an intention to work together. It's a PR exercise that we have created a political behemoth, but there is nothing in substance in these agreements.
I seem to agree with Ahmednasir on this point, that framework agreements contemplated by the Political Parties Act only express an intention as set out under the Political Parties Act. And that is why there should be framework agreements that provide in general terms how power would be shared, and they talk about percentage 20, 30, 40. They do not in any way and cannot in any way compel the sitting president of a country to act in the manner proposed and or prescribed. Remember, these are good faith agreements. Under Article 132 of the Constitution, the President as Chief Executive has an obligation to all Kenyans, guided by Article 10 of the Constitution, guided by the values of this nation, to form an all-inclusive government that takes into account all the principles of propriety.
Prof raises a very good point.
Yeah, yes.
These agreements are not binding on the incumbent president, because constitutionally you cannot tie his hand to share power in a certain predetermined manner.
Yeah. So why are we doing them?
This is a PR exercise. I think this is a PR exercise.
Just hoping that you're a gentleman and you'll believe you'll do the right thing. But essentially, these are things that are up for grabs. I would love to go to court. I love that. Declare some of them unconstitutional. You cannot compel a sitting president to act in a
manner. But you can hear at least that the legal advisor of ODM is giving notice.
No.
To these parties.
I'm just saying that you can't overreach. Right. You can't tie the hands of a president through these framework agreements. They are loose agreements, and the best will come out of the gentleman sitting there saying, we talked about this and this is how it is. But when push comes to shove, of course, we are watching.
All right, let's ask some questions of people who are watching tonight. And one, I think, goes to Ahmednasir. Regarding state capture, the, quote, original Jubilee Brigade, you included, are culpable, he says. It's a case of chicken coming home to roost. How do you respond to that?
No, I think we have made the point that Jubilee's lifespan was 2, the first 5 years and the second 5 years. I think the first 5 years basically was a continuation of, the Kibaki administration, implementation of the constitution, and I think institutions were working very well. But you know, state capture arises when power is not constrained, when power is not limited. And the last 4 years, what we had is power of a president that was not constrained. He could do what he wants. He could appoint whom he wants. He could engineer he could engineer the removal of anybody he wants. The opposition were part of him, and his government, the guys who came with him to power, were out of government. That is the problem that faced this country the last 4 years. Unlimited executive power by one person.
Right.
With the help of his brother, of course.
Okay. Senior counsel, Professor Ojienda, since the handshake, the cost of living, I think, has gone up. The loan secured for BBI would have been enough to subsidize on some of these commodities that are currently expensive. Lack of priority has made the current regime to mismanage resources, and ODM is right at the center of that. How did you respond to that?
I think the handshake brought a lot of leverage. The handshake opened doors for partnerships. The handshake brought in new projects. The handshake brought in goodwill. The handshake, we are seeing, well, he calls them Chinese loans. We are seeing development right in the city thanks to the handshake, and not just in the city. In the areas of health, we have a number of now level 5 hospitals all over in many cities. In the area of education, we even have a new system. Now we have a new system of education. I know he doesn't like it much, but I've noted today that even as we transform, we transition during this period, there's a change in the manner that we play politics. And that change is because in the new dispensation, we are going to have BBI come back as an item so that we can disperse government in the manner proposed under BBI.
Well, how doesn't my friend knows that BBI will come back? Do you know how the court will rule?
After we...
Because we are hearing rumors that some people of certain political persuasion know how the court will rule. Are you one of them?
No, I'm just a prudent lawyer. And I know that BBI will come back.
Last thoughts, Prof. And I want to speak to around the question that I'm seeing tonight, and I'll try and capture all that. The question of the responsibility of ODM in the last 5 years, in terms of how does ODM going to define itself with arrangement getting to Jubilee and whatever the handshake is, how does ODM define itself in this election? Is it still the party on the sidelines, or is it still an enabler of a regime?
I think ODM as a political party stands on a strong pedestal. In this entire framework, coalition framework, ODM is a main partner, is a pillar. And you know that ODM stands on one side, of course you have UDA on the other side, with a majoritarian subscription of membership. ODM will be strong going into this election and after. I can tell you, James, that we will have a majority in Parliament, both in National Assembly and in Senate.
I think my learned friend again doesn't answer the question. ODM, you know, in terms of the election, is the incumbent. ODM is the defender of the status quo. ODM will run on the record of Jubilee of the last 4 years. And that is why I think that Deputy President cleverly sees or is selling himself as the agent of change. Because the last 4 years, ODM was in power. Yes, ODM was in power. They are incumbent, you know. If you look at the Prime Minister's, campaign, he talks about, the good things the president has done, and he said he will continue. And I think the word he said is he will follow his footsteps. Fatanyao. And I think that is very important for Kenyans. And that's why my learned friend is saying, even the BPI, which was unpopular, which will divide the country, which will destroy, a lot of constitutional issues, which we have spent 14 to 20 billion shillings wasting, will come back. I think that's the biggest threat the voters should see.
Let me say this, James, just in brief response. Jubilee was in power. ODM was an enabler of good things that were done by His Excellency the President. I think we must acknowledge the President.
What about the bad things? What about the bad things?
No. Which bad things?
I mean,
I think
like state capture.
I think state capture...
Like arresting people on Fridays, keeping them, all those things. I mean, you know.
That was Jubilee. That was not ODM.
Yeah.
ODM was on the
In
side
Epla,
defending.
in Epla.
No,
In
no.
Epla.
ODM was defending individual rights.
Yes.
We stand for individual rights.
Right.
We speak against violations. We go to court.
And that's what ODM will stand by.
We stand, we are reformists.
10 seconds. Who's winning this election?
Of course, it's obvious. Baba.
Baba is winning the
I
election.
think it's Baba.
Ahmednasir, do I need to ask you the same question?
No, I think we know, my vintage point is always the election for 2017.
Yes.
Uhuru won by 1.4. Raila is underperformed by 15 to 20%.
Now that he talks about that,
yes.
The 1.4, you can split the 1.4 into half.
Right.
Because we've now gone to the mountain.
Where?
I think it is
Where in the
important.
mountain?
It is,
where?
What do you mean where in the mountain?
Where in the mountain?
I'll allow him to make his final point.
You're
Allow
not
him
seeing the
to make
numbers.
his final
You're
point.
not seeing
Yes.
the numbers. Are you seeing the numbers?
So Baba is winning.
Baba is winning. Is that even a question, James?
It's important. It's important for me to ask.
No, can I say?
It's important for me to
they
ask.
were saying Baba is winning 2013. They said Baba is winning
They reached the
2017.
election.
Every time you are winning.
Moses Kuri has confirmed. We've been winning.
Gentlemen, Senior Counsel for Ahmednasir Abdullahi, thank you very much for coming. Always a pleasure seeing you and your straight shooting. Senior Counsel 5, missed by 2 minutes. Professor Ojienda, please, thank you very much for coming. Come again and again. I think we'll be in a lot of with a lot of your debt tonight for helping us understand all these things and the questions on the coalitions and law and how to see and how to move things forward. Thank you very much for coming. You're watching With All Due Respect. We do this on this show every Tuesday on this channel. My name is James Matt. Do have a lovely night. With all due respect.
This is NTV.